Del Mar Hot Topics is proudly sponsored by Asteris Incorporated, the maker of Script Center, the first prescription pickup kiosk for retail pharmacies. Find Script Center at Long's Drugs in Del Mar. Additional support provided by Dean Meredith Architect and Bacall & Sneed Architects, serving Del Mar from the heart of Del Mar. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Del Mar TV Foundation or the City of Del Mar.
Del Mar Hot Topics, where we discuss issues that are important to you. And now your host, Richard Levesque.
Welcome to Hot Topics. Del Mar is perceived as an ideal place to live, an exclusive, affluent community. But exclusivity often leads to elitism and a lack of diversity. With real estate prices soaring beyond the reach of many, this village seems poised to become a gated community. Are unavoidable influences or a grand design at the heart of this trend? I'm your host, Richard Levesque.
Accessible beaches, steady surf breaks, perfect sunsets. Del Mar epitomizes the best of Southern California. Once an exotic location for well-to-do weekends, and later a playground for a Hollywood elite, today the city's summer houses have given way to family residences. Increased desirability pushes property values higher, and with that, a perception that Del Mar accommodates new money and old money, but rarely little money. An easygoing beach lifestyle has been constrained by increased rules and regulations, strict parking limits, limited road access, no train stops, and higher costs of living challenge visitors and residents alike. Tree houses have been replaced by multi-million-dollar bungalows overlooking sandstone bluffs. Protected views and protected trees underpin a distinctive look and feel. Del Mar remains an exclusive destination, but is the trend toward a closed community by circumstance or design? If the trend continues, today's children will not be able to live in the same community where they grew up. How much social and economic diversity is needed to maintain a healthy, invigorating village environment? And how much are we willing to accept?
Old-timers will tell you a lot has changed in Old Del Mar. Social conduct and regulations have changed the nature of this town forever. Potential newcomers received mixed messages. Outsiders may linger, but on what terms and for how long? With me to discuss whether the drawbridge is up or down are Bertha Leone, Morgan Scuddy, Nitza Lightling, and Bud Emerson. Well, welcome all of you.
Thank you.
Are we a laid-back, wonderful beach town or an exclusive, even elitist community? Which are we?
Walk down to the beach any weekend, now even during the week, and you see the United Nations. You see, you hear accents, you hear different ethnic voices. The beach guarantees that we will always stay very democratic. Once you get a bathing suit on, nobody knows what your status is.
But do we make people welcome in terms of coming here? We have lots of rules and regulations. Things have changed a lot. What do you think, Morgan?
It's a very difficult city for a newcomer, particularly someone who buys a home in this town and has to deal with the rules and regulations. They really are quite unique. I think perhaps one of the things I notice is the fact that if someone wants to modify their home, it pits neighbor against neighbor. And the rumors are myriad of folks that have gotten divorced or moved away or given up and left this town based on the adversarial situation that we create in terms of the design review and getting approvals. That's an unfortunate side effect of some of the rules and regulations of this town.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the greenest community. a ride along the coastline, and Del Mar is the most beautiful of them all, and that's partially because of all those DRB. I think there's other ways that we make it unpleasant.
How?
The traffic, for example. I mean, we've really regulated, and the citizens who live here have worked to keep the traffic out of the neighborhoods as best as we can to preserve the quaintness of our village life. However, I know that there's a lot of complaints about it because we don't allow free passage, and there's a lot of animosity building.
That's right.
We put vehicles and people on the street together, and basically the control there is really low speed limits and care for your neighbors. So when someone's walking their dogs, cars that are going by have to be careful. I think the problem that the neighborhood has is there's always a view that there's too much traffic. I mean, no matter if it's one car, it could be too much. But unfortunately, this is a community where people really don't work here that live here. The folks that work here come in from out of town, and the folks that live here, if they have to work, they generally work outside of this community. They're not fortunate enough to have a job where they get to stay in this town. Right. So we definitely have a flow in and out every morning. Additionally, we're a corridor, and as a corridor, traffic coming from the north going to the south in the morning, and from the city of San Diego going north in the evening, generates a lot of traffic through this town.
And that's the problem. It's the through traffic. I think if people would come here as a destination, it's a very welcoming community. But when people say we want to go through your neighborhood as fast as we can, and we don't care about who's walking, that's when we get our noses out of joint.
Well, we have a dilemma because this is a coastal community on a major corridor, and that's the reality. I mean, if we put our little downtown right on the main thoroughfare. If the town fathers back at the turn of the century had decided Del Mar Heights was part of the town, perhaps the town center would be up on the hill and people would walk there and the commuters would go by down on the highway and we wouldn't have that problem. But that's not the reality.
Well, there was no
We're
Del Mar
stuck with
Heights.
what we have.
So, Bertha, you want to say something?
We are an oasis in the middle of a booming city and county of San Diego. And it looks and it feels and it is a beautiful place to live. And people live here and work here and they shop here and they play here. And I think the people that live here, rightfully so, are trying to maintain this beautiful oasis in whatever way is possible in this huge boom that we're having in San Diego. And that in itself causes some stresses with our outside neighbors. But I agree with Bud in terms of the fact that if you come into the community, I feel that you're welcome. I think that we are a welcoming community. I don't know that I agree that there's enough diversity. The diversity ends when you leave the beach. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for diversity throughout the town, which I think would add tremendously to it. I think the price of homes, as you said, when the lowest price home in the city limits is $1.6 million, that creates an invisible gateway around our community.
I mean, in a way, you are saying that you want to keep people out. I mean, you want to keep people from driving through the town. You want to keep people off the back streets. You want to keep people from lingering with 90-minute
We
parking.
say people can come, but on our terms.
That's right.
Yeah, and our terms are, don't violate our community when you come. We'd like for you to come.
But how is driving through? How is driving through violating the community?
I can give a great example. I've walked. I'm a walker, and I like to walk, and I walk my dog. I walk with my friends. I was walking with a woman pushing a baby jogger, and the baby jogger was almost sideswiped. And that's when we really went hogwire and started trying to do something about getting that pass-through traffic off of Stratford Court, because it actually was becoming dangerous as that was being used more and more and more by people heading north. They weren't local people.
Roll their eyes.
But that dilemma in part is created again by the city fathers making a decision many years ago that we wouldn't have sidewalks. So we've merged walkers and cars together, and we create a problem. Someone calls it, when we walk our dog or walk on the street, we become a reason that slows traffic. I mean, we are out there, and we actually...
And that is intentional.
Yeah.
Well, you know...
And it works.
We're the traffic
but
calmers.
But it puts the folks at some risk of being, in your case, of having a car sideswipe a baby carriage. But that's the trade-off you have. And this is a trade-off that in part makes this town so wonderful, because in the evening there's no streetlights, there's no sidewalks, it's quiet at night. Those are things that are very desirable. And so there's a trade-off that we have in terms of this community, and I don't think anybody is going to advocate going through and putting sidewalks and curbs. I don't think anybody wants streetlights on the streets. I think everybody would like to have the utilities undergrounded. And so, I mean, I think the basic flow and the tenor of this town is very delightful. And I think anybody who lives here really enjoys living here once they get here. But the barrier that you talk about, I think, is very real.
You know, Morgan, last week or a couple of weeks ago, we did DRB, and this did not come out. I don't know if we're going to have time. I'd like to touch on it, the fact that there is a lot of acrimony, unnecessary acrimony between people because of the whole planning process. But in terms of the concept of elitist community or a easygoing beach town, can those two exist together? Is that the way we're going?
Well, I think we are intentionally trying not to be Fairbanks Ranch. I mean, that's if you look at we're the anti-Fairbanks Ranch. I mean,
would you all agree?
No, I disagree. I'd say we're very similar to Fairbanks Ranch. We have large houses relative to the size of the lots. We have no street lights. We have no sidewalks. We have a limited access, and we price discriminate. It's very expensive to buy into here. We don't allow apartment buildings to go up. We've excluded anything that would bring in density. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No,
I'm saying there's many similarities to it. We don't have the gates because this is a town. It's not planned in that regard, and thank goodness we don't.
Okay, so you're not saying that's good or bad, but you're saying let's call a spade a spade.
Exactly.
Del Mar is a community that would like to keep people out and keep it as a village. You don't agree?
I don't agree. I don't think that Del Mar wants to keep people out. I think Del Mar wants people to come in and to respect, like they would want us to respect their communities should we go in their communities, which means that you drive comfortably through the streets. It means that you respect the beaches when you're down there. It means that you come and you have fun, and you visit us.
And we bonded ourselves. We borrowed money, and we pay the loans back to create parks where people can come. And we try to make it easy for people to come and enjoy it. And we maintain, the beach is a state resource, and we're the trustees. And we maintain it in an open configuration and try to make it as accessible as possible.
It's the citizens of Del Mar who keep the beaches clean, who keep the bluff trails clean. I know, I do it myself. And the amount of trash that's been gathering since the opening of the 56 is actually much greater than it's ever been in the 20 years that I've lived here. So what is that about? I mean, are there people that are coming to our town, into our village, and disrespecting, as Bertha says, our right to live here and the fact that we enjoy this beautiful place? But there's a lot, I think, an underlying resentment about that.
Well, I think the reality is that we have a tremendous amount of growth in North County, and the result is that if you think of what's transpired in the last 20 years just by going east of here, I mean, the density has gone up tremendously, and these are all people that want to go to the beach, and this is one of the best beaches in the county.
Can we hold on there and take a quick break? Sure. Stay with us for more of Hot Topics. After the break, we're going to discuss whether outside influence or insider intention is at the heart of the way outsiders view the village. I'm your host, Richard Levac. We'll be back.
Do you have an idea for Hot Topics? We'd love to hear from you. Comment on past shows or suggest an idea of participants for a new one. Help us make it better for you.
You're watching Del Mar Hot Topics, and I'm your host, Richard Levac. My guests, Bertha Leone, Morgan Scuddy, Nitza Lightling, and Bud Emerson, are here discussing whether exclusivity in Del Mar is a result of nature or nurture. We put the question to some local residents and visitors here are some of their thoughts.
I think Del Mar has always been an exclusive town. When I was a kid in the 30s, we always thought, everybody in town liked to think it was an exclusive town. And because of the summer people and the rich people that came into town during the summer, $1 million years ago was a lot of money. And a million today is not that much, because we have people here, I don't know their salary, their incomes, but it's $50 million, $100 million, $200 million is I imagine kind of the norm. I have many friends that, a lady friend in Los Angeles, she said, well, I'd love to come to Del Mar. And I said, well, you couldn't afford it because she lives on a pension. So I mean, I'm lucky to be here myself. And thank goodness for my forefathers to discover this place in the 20s.
I mean, it's exclusive in the sense that not a lot of people can afford to live here, but it's an open community. There's friendly people. There's a lot of tourists that come through here. So maybe that's that sense that we all belong a little bit. I'm sure that, I don't know about all the dynamics of living here, but the dynamic of coming as a visitor is pretty nice.
My question has always been with development is where you need development for the economic good of the region and the country. But at what point do you say enough's enough? And I've coached Torrey Pines High School surf team now 7 years. And I'm real concerned about a lot of these kids, that they will not be able to enjoy the community when they're adults. They won't be able to afford it.
That's the interesting thought would be who does it keep out? And I think when I moved here in '70, had a greater mix of students and people associated with the universities, both UCSD and state. And so some of that's probably filters out over time from the younger end. And it would be nice to have a little more diversity in town. I think it adds to your thought process.
I lived in Mission Beach for a while. It was really loud and kind of, I don't know, it was a great place to live as a college student, but coming up here is just fantastic. The place is quiet and
calm.
Yeah, calm. And I think the prices aren't that different from other places in San Diego, but people think they are, so it keeps them away. So that's kind of nice.
We don't feel isolated, but there's maybe a bit more diversity in other areas. One of the concerns that we have is that we'd like to have a greater mix in terms of diversity, ethnic diversity in particular, to raise our children around. We're both from areas that had a little bit wider ethnic and racial diversity than we have here. But we're seeing more of that come in.
But, living in Del Mar, you're, as a not-so-established couple, you're living in an apartment, whereas elsewhere you could be living in a house. So I think that makes it a little difficult. But hey, you can't beat it.
So, studies show that diversity is good economically for a community. Is Del Mar diverse enough?
No, absolutely not. Del Mar is age diverse, but it's certainly not very colorful. And I was made so aware of that today when I was downtown. I came back to Del Mar and it just looks plain vanilla. I think one of the challenges of getting diversity in Del Mar is the lack or the challenge of affordable housing. I know we have a couple of programs. I work with Del Mar Community Connections, and through the city we administer the shared housing program and the rental assistance program, which does a lot towards assisting diversity, but it's not enough. I think we need more diversity in Del Mar.
Do we need more diversity?
Yes.
Why?
We have the diversity, but we don't acknowledge it. We have a regular population, and then we have a whole other population of people who work in yards and work in houses and work in restaurants. And we don't have any accommodation for them to live here. And one of the things that some of us are trying to do is get a second unit ordinance so that we can build little places that people can afford to rent. And particularly people who the teachers and
I don't think
the firemen.
I don't think that program's realistic. I think if you really wanted to get low-income people to come in here, you would have to have low-income housing, and I don't think the town really wants that. I think when we look at diversity, there's we have price discrimination in terms of the housing. I think even to rent, our base rents are relatively high. So really what you have to do, you're stratifying the population, and you're saying anybody who has above a certain income or is independently wealthy can come here. And then you're looking at diversity across that group of people. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem, that we all think of diversity in terms of we need every different group. I don't think there's an easy solution, and I think barring changing the whole fundamentals of the town, I think really in terms of diversity, we're looking at people outside coming in for the day, using the beach, as you said so much earlier today. That's where you see the diversity. Mm-hmm.
I don't think you need to have low-income housing in order to get diversity in the town. I mean, we have a shared housing program that, and there are many people in town that have homes that are large enough, if they want some income or they want some services, they can bring in, we can match them with people that have, and I will say income limits because it's not low income. Low income is $38,000 a year. You're not talking destitute people.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We're talking about people who we see every day.
And so what's the program that's on the shelf? What are people doing to address this here?
Well, we have two programs in the city of Del Mar. One is the shared housing program and one is the rental assistance program, both of which are administered by Del Mar Community Connections and both of which are funded by the city of Del Mar.
Well, this is a small town. Mm-hmm. So what will make diversity here? How many people do you need to have diversity? What are you trying to draw in here? Who are you trying to attract?
Anybody who wants to be here, who can't afford to be here now.
Well, there's a richness of culture.
But wait a minute, a richness of culture, we can't, Enfuego is involved in a lawsuit right now because of noise. They want to close it down by 10 o'clock or something, right? Do we really want diversity, Bud?
That's more alcohol than
richness of culture.
That's more
the
alcohol
guys
than
that go
culture.
Out and drink. I mean, I don't think that's what we're talking about with culture. You see who can drink the most and make the most noise.
Kids who can grow up with neighbors who are different than themselves, so that they can learn different kinds of values and have broader minds.
So we don't want people.
That's why we have schools and universities. I mean, really, you have to remember this is a bedroom community.
If you go to Torrey Pines High School, rarely do you share a classroom with a person of color. And I mean, almost it's as if you have to leave this community and travel outside of San Diego to meet people who are different than yourselves. Mm-hmm. And that broadens perspective, and it increases a sense of, beyond community. We really need to have a sense of coexistence with others.
Well, I think what I'm really getting at is I think our town is too small. And I think you really to address this fundamentally, and I think really you address it in terms of perhaps the county or in terms of the region. And that's really where you're going to find diversity. You need more area. In a large city, you have you have ethnic neighborhoods. Well, we don't have ethnic neighborhoods.
We're a village to have diversity. You can have diversity intermingled in the village as we have it. Why does it have to be isolated?
How do we do that?
Yeah, there's so few housing units.
How do we do it?
Well, let's create incentives for second units. Mm-hmm. I mean, a 500 square foot unit where one or two persons could live. There are a lot of houses in town that could afford to have that extra unit.
Well,
the people who would live there would be people who couldn't afford to buy a full house, but they could rent there. They could they already work in the community.
It sounds great, but number one, are you going to change your floor area ratios?
Yes.
So you want
I would say yes.
Change the floor area ratios.
That's a desirable social goal.
Yes.
I don't disagree with you.
And we'll have an argument about it, which we all do, and that's what's great about this community.
I think a lot of people would be in favor of changing the floor area ratios and allowing that unit. I think if you went forward with it, I think you could get a lot of support.
Because we're losing the diversity of having a family neighborhood because a lot of families can't move here. The houses are small. Look at the beach area. Most of those houses stay empty because they're second homes for people.
Yeah, that is a problem.
I just think on the other hand, though, there's a lot of passion in Del Mar and a lot of cooperation, and people get involved. They show up at meetings. They want to know what the issues are, and I think there's an open-mindedness here that's rich, and I appreciate that a lot. And, you know, if we can make changes that support the entire community and even beyond, I think people are committed to doing that here.
Yeah, there's a sense of ownership, community ownership here that you don't get in a planned developer controlled community. I mean, people come here because they can argue about a stop sign. They can argue about.
I don't think that's the reason people come here. I think once they do come here, when their ox gets gored, then they take a stand. In other words, people get involved when they have a problem, then they become involved. And most of the people, it seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, but as an observer, the folks that get involved have a little hobby horse that they're after. There's something they want to change, or there's something they want to get.
Right.
Some guy wants to put speed bumps on the road, or wants to change a road one way because it bothers him. So he becomes, or she becomes, active. And, you know, I don't know that that's good or bad, but that's what I see. I see people have an agenda.
It sounds like you've divided among the population, those that are new to the community and want something versus those that have been here and have a long history that really just genuinely care.
Well, I think even people who've been here that are active, many of them, they have an agenda. They have something they want to accomplish. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's what motivates a lot of people. And that's why they get involved.
But it's different from just being able to do whatever you want on your lot, which is what a lot of people expect to do, even if it has adverse impact on the neighborhood.
The lots are too small. The lots are too small.
No, they're not.
What are you going to do?
No, they're too small.
You can build a 3 or 4
You know
square
what?
foot house.
This is a great point for us to stop. Diverse opinions about the diversity of our community. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion. Join us next week for another exciting hot topic. I'm your host, Richard Levesque.
Catering provided by Cafe Del Mar, a contemporary bistro. Promotional material provided by Clone Duplicating and Printing. Copies of this program are available at the Del Mar Library, 1309 Camino Del Mar. Del Mar Hot Topics is proudly sponsored by Asteris Incorporated, the maker of Script Center, the first prescription pickup kiosk for retail pharmacies. Find Script Center at Long's Drugs in Del Mar. Additional support provided by Dean Meredith Architect and Bacall & Sneed Architects, serving Del Mar from the heart of Del Mar.